Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the THICCDAD Podcast. Will that be the title forever? I have no idea, but I'm your host, Tyler Champagne. And why am I doing this podcast? Well, because there's not enough podcasts out there, so I thought I'd get back into it. I used to have a podcast. I stopped around when my son was born because he needed my attention, I guess, and I wanted to be a good father. You can still be a good father with a podcast. So let's see if I can do it. What's this podcast going to be? It's going to be probably 15 to 20 minute episodes with content mostly about parenting. It'll kind of mirror my content on TikTok and Instagram. It'll be in longer form. It'll probably be some rants, some personal stories. It won't have any toddler characters, so if that's what you're looking for, I'm sorry. It's just going to be me being an adult, being a vulnerable adult, a vulnerable dad. Probably, but thank you for tuning in. If you are listening, this is the first episode. Again, for right now, it's called the THICCDAD Podcast. Why? Because it's my license plate. It's also on my water bottle because I'm super good at marketing and branding. And you know what? I think we might have a little bit of fun here. I am tired right now. My wife is more tired. If you don't know, I have a 2.5-year-old son and a 4-month-old daughter. We have one of each. We did it. And we're doing it right now. And it is tough, man. I'm not going to lie to you. 2 kids is an incredible amount of work. It's different. People always ask me, is the second baby harder than the first? Is the transition from 1 to 2 harder than the transition from 0 to 1? And it's hard. I'd say it's different types of hard, okay? It is like, okay, so your first baby, it's difficult. Let's say it's like one sport, right? It's like professional badminton. And in your second baby is also hard. It's like a totally different sport. It's like professional bocce ball, if that exists. And you're like, well, I don't know how to play bocce ball professionally or badminton. And you just kind of like figure it out. You watch videos online and you figure it out. And you never really know what you're doing. I still don't know what I'm doing. I'm over 2.5 years into being a parent, and I still have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. Sometimes my wife and I look at each other and we go, what have we gotten ourselves into? And then our kids do something super cute together. Like the other day we were at a cottage with some friends, and my son just wanted to hold my daughter, and he cuddled with her for like 5 minutes. And it was the cutest thing ever. And I took pictures of that moment. Because pictures don't have sound. Right? Pictures often don't convey chaos if the kids are smiling in it. Live photos sometimes will, and videos will. When I'm talking to other parents, don't show me the pictures of your kids. Don't show me cute pictures of your kids being little darling angels. Show me the videos. Show me the chaos. Show me the sound behind what being a parent is like. Because pictures don't have sound. And that's what I want to see. I want to see the real chaos, because this podcast is going to be discussing a lot of the chaos. It'll discuss some of the good news stories, because there are parenting wins. We have them very occasionally. Let's start at the beginning. What's becoming a parent? First of all, let's talk about postpartum for a second from a dad's perspective. Okay, I had no idea about postpartum. I never even heard the term. I didn't even know what it was. I had read several parenting books before my son was born. And when I say read, I mean listened to in my car. And not a single one of them talked about postpartum in a new mom, what to look for, what to recognize. Because postpartum it's this wild thing, right? It's like this evil witch that lives inside a new mom that like controls her hormones, her emotions. Because in movies and TV and you hear stories of people women becoming new moms, and it's this magical thing. They bond with the baby right away, and it's this beautiful thing. And you never hear about postpartum, right? At least from a dad's perspective. I think postpartum is becoming a conversation now. It's much more in the ether. I don't know what that word means, but it's becoming much more of a conversation, which I think is good. But I had no idea what postpartum was. Again, it's like this evil witch that lives inside a new mom that like controls her. It's like those parasite bugs that like take over a grasshopper and like drive it around like a car, because you don't know what it is. It's these emotions and hormones and things that you can't even control. And, recognizing it is so difficult, because all of a sudden you see your wife, your spouse, the mother of your child getting super emotional, getting frustrated and all these things, and you have no idea how to deal with it. You don't even know what it is. You're like, what do how could you be feeling this way? I know, there's exhaustion, but like this seems like something different. So we're going to talk a little bit about postpartum and maybe about some topics that you don't normally hear about, maybe from a dad's perspective, because my wife had some postpartum issues. They weren't severe, but they were bad enough where it was like, okay, we need to discuss this. We need to look into this. We need to, seek a medical assistance on this, right? My wife is on medication right now, and it's been helping quite a bit. And there's no shame in that, right? The whole thing with postpartum is like the moms feel like they're a failure because they don't have this amazing, incredible bond right away, or they have these feelings of guilt, of that they maybe ruined their life, their freedom is gone, all this stuff. And postpartum is so hard to deal with, man. So we're going to talk about some stuff like that. Where would you listen to this podcast? Maybe if you're trying to put your baby to sleep. Maybe if your toddler wakes up in the middle of the night and then you have to go put them back down to sleep, and then they're asleep and then you're not. Maybe you can toss this podcast on in the AirPods or the headphones and give it a listen, and hopefully have some laughs and maybe learn something. I don't know. I'm not very smart. I have had a lot of concussions, and it's definitely affected my ability to be a person that thinks. But we're going to figure it out. And podcast is going to be on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and then video version will be on YouTube, if I can still remember how to edit video and put everything together properly. So let's talk about, again, let's go back to the beginning of being a parent. Childbirth, okay? What an outdated system childbirth is, okay? If we both have iPhones and I want to send you a photo that I took, all we got to do now, we have to chest bump our phones, right? All we got to do is chest bump our phones and the picture just goes to your phone now. But we're still doing the legs up in the air, contractions, counting, growing a baby inside of us. It's insane. It makes absolutely no sense. Childbirth, I've said this before, but childbirth is like building a large boat in your basement. And then someone's like, well, that's great that you're building a boat, but how are you going to get the boat out of the basement? And you're like, I don't know, we're going to ram it through the door, maybe. You're like, well, what if that doesn't work? You're like, I don't know, we'll cut the roof off the house. I don't know, we're going to figure it out. I didn't really think about that. Childbirth is wild. It's so insane to watch. It's incredible. The amount of respect and love I have for my wife grew 10,000-fold when I watched her give birth to our babies. I think every guy, every man should at least be in the room when a woman they love gives birth. I'm not talking about spouses. I'm talking about any guy should be in the room with someone. You don't have to be up close, just to see enough of what a woman goes through to give birth, because, whoa, it's insane. Whoa, it makes no sense. The math calculations, if you're to okay, this is like that, and this is the size of this, and you're like, hang on, that doesn't make any sense. None of it makes any sense, okay? Seeing it doesn't make any sense. It's like the world's greatest magic trick. I half expected a couple of rabbits and a rainbow flag to keep coming out of my wife after our children came out. It's insane. And shout out to anyone who works in a hospital, in a birthing unit, the nurses, the doctors, the gynecologists. I don't know how you deal with that. When my son was being born, there were minor complications. There were some times where his heart rate dropped, and they were worried about it. When my wife got the epidural, he had an incident where his heart rate dropped. And then when my wife was really pushing to finally give birth, after 18 hours of labor, he also had a heart rate drop. And the doctor, what they don't tell you is that they go in full doctor, nurse, let's get this baby out mode. They'll push you out of the way. They'll be like a 63-pound Filipino nurse that'll just absolutely body check a grown man out of the way and be like, get out of here, buddy. Let me do my work. And they do everything amazingly. They're so involved. And it's scary to watch a little bit because they're so used to it. It's their job. They're not being gentle. They're doing what they have to do to get this baby out and make sure that the mother and the baby are okay. So it's an incredible thing to watch. I'm glad I was involved for both of my children's births. I cut the umbilical cord both times. In the second, when my daughter was born, March of this year, March of 2024, my wife was in labor for about 12 hours, and they decided that she was dilated enough to start pushing. So she starts pushing. When she pushed with my son, she pushed for like 20 minutes, and he came right out. He was a small baby, just over 6 pounds. 52 minutes into my wife pushing out our daughter, she's so exhausted. She's been up all night. It was 7 a.m. She did not get any sleep. And she's like, I can't do this. And the nurses are like, yes, you can. Yes, you can. They're giving her like a high school football coach Disney movie type of pep talk. And I was like, oh my God. I was getting inspired. I started doing like jumping jacks in the corner. I wanted to do push-ups, but I got a bad shoulder, so I didn't. But they're like, yes, you can do this. And at one point they were just like, okay, my daughter was stuck. My wife was exhausted. And they're like, all right, we have to get this baby out now. They pushed me out of the way. Again, these little nurses that you'd see on the street and be like, oh, that's a tiny person. Adorable. Bodied me out of the way. And they're like, sorry, Dad, we got to do our stuff. And there's two of these nurses. And they're like, it looks like they're doing CPR on my wife's stomach. They're just reefing on it. My wife is screaming in pain because the epidural that she got stopped working, which is a nightmare if you're a woman giving birth and you want the epidural, because everything went fine with our first when my son was born. Everything went fine with the epidural. This time, they do like a feeling test up the leg, and when they got to my wife's knees, she's like, I can feel your hands, and everyone's like, okay. So they start, it looks like they're like trying to deflate an air mattress at like Olympic speed, these two nurses, and they're just reefing on my wife's stomach. And there's a third one and who's reaching up inside and grabbing my daughter's shoulders and pulling her out. And I'm horrified because I'm watching 3 amazingly well-trained medical professionals just beat the absolute crap out of my wife for 6 to 7 minutes. My daughter comes out. The doctor looks up and goes, hey, Dad, do you want to cut the umbilical? And sees my face and goes, oh, Dad, you're a little bit gray. And I was like, uh-huh. I just watched a 3-on-1 UFC fight between you and my wife's uterus. Yes, I'm gray. I'm surprised you can't just see only my skeleton. Like, I'm surprised all of my skin didn't melt off my face like that one guy in the Indiana Jones movie. And my daughter comes out. And she wasn't crying right away, which is a very scary thing. So they bring her over to that little, I don't know what it is, like an air fryer for babies where there's like a lamp that keeps them warm and then it weighs them. And my daughter was 9 pounds, okay? Almost 50% bigger than my son. I looked at my wife and I was like, oh, 9 pounds. And we're like, oh my God, her legs are up. They're stitching her back up. Blood everywhere. And somehow it's still a beautiful moment. So I would recommend anyone to witness the birth of a child, preferably if someone you know. You can't just walk in. Don't do that. That's not appropriate. But I would highly recommend doing that to anyone, any guy, any man out there who's thinking about becoming a father. I would highly recommend witnessing a birth because the amount of love I have and respect and just admiration for my wife of like, oh my God, is just insane. Like, yeah, I'm tall, okay? I'm 6'2". You might consider me a tall drink of water, but I'm like Dasani, okay? I'm not your first choice, but I am still technically a tall drink of water. My most impressive task is like getting a roll of paper towel from above the fridge, right? I'm like, honey, don't worry. I got this. I reach up, no stool, nothing, just reach into the back. My wife birthed 2 humans, okay? Way more impressive. God, I feel useless some days. And I think anyone who's thinking about having children, here's what you should do. I think that if a couple is thinking about having kids, because I don't think you're ever ready. I mean, you can prepare yourself, right? You can have a bassinet. You can have a car seat. You can have all the little things lined up in a diaper caddy. You're prepared. Are you ever ready? I don't think so. But I think that every couple who's thinking about having babies should do the following. I think they should have to get ready fully to go to a wedding. So I'm talking you are not showered in your PJs, to fully wedding ready, but you also have a toddler and a baby with you, and you have to tend to their needs while getting ready. If you can make it through that and get to the wedding on time and not get divorced or in some sort of serious physical or emotional altercation, then I think you might be able to handle having kids. I also don't judge people who don't want kids anymore. Before you have kids, you're kind of like, maybe you think it's selfish to not have kids. You're like, well, who's going to take care of you when you're older? I no longer judge people who don't want to have kids. It's hard. It's so insanely hard. Is it rewarding? Yes. Is it rewarding in the same way that the McDonald's app is rewarding? No. I've never once gotten a free coffee from being a parent. You actually lose a lot of coffees because you make yourself a coffee and then something absolutely catastrophic happens with one of your children. Then you abandon that coffee and your coffee's in the corner like, lonely, I'm so lonely. So it actually costs you a lot of coffees, but it is rewarding in terms of like emotionally rewarding and all that stuff. But I'm not here to be sappy. But I don't judge people who don't want to have kids. Your life changes so drastically. If you want to raise kids and have a family, that's great. If you want to go to Antigua and get fingered on a catamaran, that's also great. Do that. That sounds like a lot of fun. That's not something I'm interested in at this point in my life, but a lot of people are. And you can totally do that as well. So I have people all the time who are, similar to my age or a little bit younger, and they're like, I don't think I'm ready. And I go, good. Well, then don't have kids yet. And again, I highly recommend, I think I'm going to put this into some sort of, I think I'm going to start selling online courses. I think that's sort of the next step. When a dumb idiot like me gets a podcast, you just immediately start selling courses. And my courses is going to be wedding prep with a toddler and a baby that's not yours. Can you get it done? If so, then you are ready to have children. We are almost 17, 18 minutes into this. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you've made it this far, my own family probably hasn't even made it this far. I doubt they'll even listen to any of this. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. That's the first episode of the THICCDAD Podcast. Again, my name is Tyler Champagne. You can find me on Instagram at heated_seats. You can find me on TikTok at Champagne Tyler. You can find me on Cameo at Champagne Tyler. I will do custom videos for you. I've done hundreds of them, and they are a lot of fun. I've done gender reveals. I've done birthday wishes. I've done Mother's Day and Father's Day wishes. I've done Merry Christmas wishes. I'm not going to sing. I'm not going to show you my feet. So if you're thinking of any of those, it's not going to happen. There's no amount of money in the world that could get me to show my feet on video. But $50 will do it. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'm probably going to be doing these episodes. My goal is twice a month. Again, I have a 2.5-year-old and a 4-month-old. They are beautiful, adorable little babies. They are amazing in pictures. Videos and in real life, there's a lot more chaos going on. But you know what? I love being a father. It's an incredible journey. I lost my father when I was 19 years old, and it's a great gift to be able to be a father. I wish he was still around to be a grandfather, because I know he'd be a great grandfather. I know he'd be a chaotic grandfather, because he'd buy my 2-year-old son like a Sea-Doo, and he'd be like, "Oh, look what I got," and I'd be like, "Oh, thanks, Dad. Oh man, I really appreciate that." You could most grandparents, to be annoying, will buy like a drum set or like a tarantula that hates toddlers. My dad would absolutely be like, "Oh, I got him a snowmobile." Huh? He can't even stay on a balance bike without smashing his head off the curb. Anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. Once again, my name is Tyler Champagne. Like, subscribe, give this 5 stars anywhere you can. I appreciate it. Thank you. I love you so much.